Hey guys, Steven Sun here at Homes by Sun with Remax. You might notice there's a little bit of coarse in my voice because I was hit with COVID last week. And so I've been off for a few days trying to recover, and I'm still recovering. So my voice is still not back to 100%. But I wanted to jump on here to discuss about the Toronto real estate market for the last 2 weeks. And if you were reading any news, look at any news article, you would have seen a lot of articles talking about, we're in a downturn. Let me just share my screen. Articles such as these ones, or this one, talking about prices dropping. Now, I want to reiterate that a lot of times the media wants to publish either really positive or really negative news. That's the only way for them to sell papers. That's the only way. And a lot of buyers or a lot of people are buying into the current news. So if the newspaper says the market has dropped, they think that is exactly what's happening. If the newspaper says market is rising, that's what they think it's happening all over. But the reality is there are many pockets in Toronto or in even outskirts that prices haven't dropped that much, or they have been more stable, more flat, instead of what the headline suggests. This is because if you remember, 3 months ago, there was, Russia invaded Ukraine. That was all over the news, and now you hardly see too many articles written about it. And so what I think is going to happen is slowly people will get used to this kind of headlines, and it doesn't sell paper anymore. It doesn't draw any attention. And so people will start to forget. And for those that really need to move, they're going to go back into the market. Now, how long is this sort of quiet period is going to last? Let's take a look at historical chart for some indications. In the past, there had been a few correction period. Most recently, you had the 08-09 downturn, and you also had the 2016-2017 downturn here, and then here was COVID. As you can see, it takes anywhere from maybe just around a year. This was around a year and a half, and the COVID downturn took about I would say 9 months before prices started to creep up again. The reason being is we have a very strong financial system, so a lot of the owners are not that desperate to sell. What we're seeing now is a lot of investors who are exiting the market because they made some gains in the past few years. Maybe they bought when it was low in 2017, 2018. Prices are now here, so they made some money. They're taking the gains. Tenants just left, so they want to capitalize on that, take the win, and go stay out of the market for a little bit, wait for prices to go down further, or they're moving their money to somewhere else. For the people that actually own their own place and didn't make a purchase in the last few months, they're not panic selling. They're not selling because they still own their place and they're able to afford the mortgage. Most people are on fixed term mortgages. So the recent rate hike is not going to affect them too much. They've got their rate locked in for 4 or 5 years, or even if they're on variable, the increase hasn't hit them as bad yet because they are not over leveraged. So what we're seeing is mostly a lot of either someone who made a purchase in the last few months that need to sell, or a lot of investors just taking whatever gain that they've had, since 2017, 2018, and just taken it off the table. So those are a lot of the sellers that are selling. Obviously, there's some that are, owner occupied units, but they are holding their prices. They're holding their prices. They may be dropping a little bit, but they're not dropping drastically. So, and we have to separate detached or low rise versus high rise, because in the condo setting, prices will have to drop a little bit more because, people have more, or buyers have more selections. Whereas on the low rise, there's less choices. So that's the little quick state of the market. And now let's look at our normal charts that we've been tracking since the beginning of the year. Now, the week before, May 21st to May 27 was the lowest number of transactions that we saw in the freehold market. If you look at this chart here, I'll highlight the column, this column here. We were at 880, which is way down on a weekly basis. It's about half of what the number of transactions, let's say in early March. And so it was a very quiet week. If you remember, there was a rate hike and there was election coming beginning of June. So this was the week before all of that happened. And that's why a lot of buyers were sitting on the sideline. They wanted to see who's going to be in the power and what the interest rate hike was actually going to happen. So they didn't make a move. But as you can see, right after that, the number of transactions actually increased, which shows that buyers are a little more confident in the market, and they're going to go back in and try to make a deal. And if we look at the number of new listings, we had a slight bump the week before, almost 2,600 new listings came on. And then we had a slight drop to about 2,300. So number of new listing decreased a bit, and the number of transactions increased from the week before, which is all really good indication of that right now it's more of a balanced market. We'll continue going to see this up and down. You may have 1 week that's quieter, maybe it's a shorter week, maybe there's vacation, Victoria Day, whatever, or Canada Day coming up. And then you might have another week where people wanted to make things happen, and they all go out. So the other number that we wanted to look at is the sold to list ratio for this number here, the number of transactions that sold over asking, 43.69%, which is indication of a balanced market. Remember, we were as high as 87%. Now we're down to 43%. So half of what was sold, or less than half of what was sold, were sold over asking. This is a good indication, again, that it's more of a balanced market. Places are still getting multiple offers if they are priced really well, but not every place. So pricing now becomes very important. If we look at the average sold price for the last 2 weeks, it's pretty flat. So again, it's more of a balanced market. Buyers are very sensible right now, and a lot of sellers are also realistic, so they're able to meet at the market price, and we don't have any further drops. We shall see in the next couple of weeks if that's the case. Now, in the condo side, it pretty much mimics the freehold side. We also had an increase in number of transactions. Again, the week before was the lowest since we've been tracking, 269 transactions only. Normally, we would be up to almost 600. So less than half the number of transactions, and the percentage of sold over asking 42% for the week before versus 36. Again, last week there was an increase from 269 to 309, which is shown here. So the condo market as well had its low at the end of May. The last week of May, it was very, very quiet, and then it started to pick up a bit. And I've noticed that in the last few days that we are getting a lot more showings this week versus the week before. So next week, when we look at this week's data, I think the number will be a little bit better. Hopefully more than 309 transactions. Average price, I would say that's flat. It went up, it goes down 1 week, goes up 1 week. So the condo prices are pretty stable, pretty flat right now. Haven't gone up, they haven't gone down drastically. The issue here is they take a lot longer to sell. So they will eventually sell, but they're not going to sell in a month or 2 months. They might sell within like 3 to 4 months. So if you have a condo that you want to sell, be prepared to leave it on the market for a little while. Buyers have a lot of selections now. And so they're cross-shopping, they're comparing this and that. You just have to be very competitive with your price. But in certain buildings, prices have gone down quite a bit. So keep in mind that when we are looking at condos, even though we're only looking at Toronto, different buildings have their own trend. So you're gonna have to look at the exact building that you're referring to. Overall, we might be looking at a flat average price, but certain buildings, especially the older ones, are seeing a lot more price drop than the newer ones. All right, so lastly, I wanted to give you some strategies that you can use when you're selling in a down market. I don't mean that we are prices are dropping so much that this is a down market. What I mean is it's more down as in, it's quieter, less showings, less transactions, things are taking a little bit longer. This is this type of market. So in the slower market, here's 5 things that you need to consider. Consideration number 1 is pricing is very key now. Buyers are very, very sensitive to price. They won't even look at something if they think it's overpriced, it's way out of whack. So in terms of pricing, there are 3 levels you can be at. You can be on the market, which means you're up here. You can be on the market, or you can be at the market, which means you're priced somewhere along the lines of what the market price may be. On the market means you're way above it. You're way above it. If the condos are selling between 500K to 600K and you price it at 650, you're on the market. You're on too far ahead. But you can be at the market, so 500K, 600K, you are priced, let's say 575, you are at the market. Or you can be ahead of the market. Now, the lower you go, the more buyers are going to be interested in your unit. So if you're around here, you have the most number of buyers who may be interested. So right now, you want to be ahead of the market. Ahead of the market means you're going to price your property at least 5% lower than what you think it's worth, right? So or discuss with your professional. And so what happens is if you price it well, you're going to get a lot of showings, and there may be possibility of multiple offers. But if you price it 5% below market and still getting no showings, then you wouldn't have gotten any showing even if you price it at the market. So right now, you need to because when we're looking at market price, quote unquote, we're looking at historical data. And every month, it seems to be that prices are dropping a bit, or buyers are waiting for the drop. So if you want to encourage quicker actions, you need to price a little bit lower. Consideration number 2 is you need to repair and replace and update your property. Before you list, consider spending some money to make it more attractive, make it, more better curb appeal, let's say. So you may want to paint the property in either inside or outside. A lot of properties, you may need to paint all the window trims, or if you have a deck, something like that, you need to give it a fresh coat of paint. It's springtime now, so it's very easy to do. Find a painter who can come in and give it a fresh coat. Replace any caulking. If you're in the bathroom, in the bathtub, or around the sink area, make it nice and clean so that buyers come in and don't feel like they're buying a dirty property. So you need to, and you may want to replace your lights. Now, lights are very important for showing. They need to be bright, and they need to have the correct color temperature, not too white. So I would stay away from anything over 4,000 Kelvin, because all your photos come out, it'll be very pale. You want to stay around 3,000, 3,500 Kelvin, or even 2,700. Those are ideal. Warm lighting gives the place a warm feeling and feels more like home. Consideration number 3 is be very flexible with closing. You need to have contingency plan, depending on where you're moving to. If you bought already, if you haven't bought, be ready to, let's say, move out, put your stuff in the storage and go rent somewhere. If the right buyer comes along, gives you a decent price, but they need the place right away. So have those discussions with your professional, or plan ahead and have, being able to accommodate any kind of closing. You can stay for longer or shorter. So if you're flexible, you increase your chance of selling to someone who's willing to pay the price, but they need the place at a certain time in their schedule. So you need to work more with the buyers now, instead of like before, and say, hey, I need to move on that day or that certain day, and you need to come to my terms. Also have backup moving plans. Have a mover booked, but also be prepared that if they don't show up, if there's something, you can call on another one, maybe pay a little bit more for like a last minute emergency, right? So, or, even just moving it yourself. So have some moving plan. The best thing is do not close on the same day. That way, if the movers don't show up, you still have time before your closing day to find somebody else. Consideration number 4 is home inspections are back. Now, in the last couple of years, I don't think I saw my home inspector much. All of the offers were unconditional. Our listings never had any inspector came through, but this is all back to normal now. Offers are now including financing condition, home inspection, and if it's a condo, looking at the status. These are very, very normal conditions, and they're back into all the offers now. So before you list, you may want to have a pre-listing inspection done, so you know what needs to be fixed, or maybe you have a contractor come in, look over the house. Be realistic about the state of repair. So don't kid yourself and say, oh, no, that's working. If it doesn't work well, replace it, repair it, fix it. Because you only have 10, 15 minutes to impress the buyer. So the buyer comes in, they try something, it needs to work. If it doesn't work, they're not buying it. They don't want to deal with somebody else's headache. Be prepared for renegotiation after conditional sale. So even if you sell it with the condition of home inspection, this and that, be open-minded that they may come back and ask for money off. Now, depending on the price of the sale, sometimes giving them another 4,000 or 5,000, if that will make the deal happen, you should consider. Giving money and not having to fix anything is always better than agreeing to fix something and you can't deliver. So have, depending on what items are raised, have a discussion with your professional and see whether you can make it work by giving a small rebate. And the last consideration is that if perchance that the buyer of your property can't close because they haven't sold yet, there are ways around it. You don't have to kill the deal. What you can do is use an old strategy called vendor take-back mortgage. It is, I haven't seen it done in the last 10 years or so, but we are starting to see it happen now. A lot of buyers who bought a property back in March when it was high and have a closing in June, they're having problems because their property hasn't sold yet. So it may be something worthwhile to discuss with your lawyer. They can help you draft an agreement. And so you would give a small vendor take back for a small period, like usually 6 months to 9 months. It can be interest free or interest only, or they pay interest only until the expiry of the mortgage, then they will have to pay you the full. This buys the buyer a bit more time for them to sell the property. Also make sure that your deal will actually close. It's something, it's a tool that was very much used in the 80s, and it has a lot of benefit. It's just that a lot of sellers don't understand it, don't want to deal with it, so they never thought of it. But we need to be creative now. We need to make the deal happen, because if the deals fall through, you have to resell it again. You still have to, yeah, sure, you can sue the buyer for any price difference, but you still have to go through the motion of going to court, suing, and that's going to take a year, 2 years, 3 years or more. So why not be creative, give them a vendor take back mortgage, close the deal, and then at least you get majority of your money already. All right, so that's my quick look at the state of the market right now. Again, we're in a balanced market. There's no panic here. A lot of sellers are simply taking their profit off the table, and they made some money in the last few years. Now it's time they put the money into something else, maybe upgrading their home, their own property, doing renovations, so they're exiting the market. But it's not a fire sale yet. Properties are still selling for more than a few years ago, so we're not in any sort of recession. And definitely it's not yet a buyer's market, because an inventory, a number of months inventory, we're sitting at around 3 to 4 months right now. We were at one point less than 3 months. So right now we're sitting at around 4 months inventory. Up to 6 months inventory is still a balanced market. So hopefully that gives you a quick understanding of the state of the market as of today, which is June 9th. And I will see you next week to talk about the real estate market this week. Have a wonderful day. Take care. Bye for now.